treating your fellow human being with with respect, because everyone's got different talents.
Yes.
Even someone who might be autistic or...
That's right. That was my sister Belinda talking, who sometimes prompts me with questions and directs the show. We were talking about equality, and equality is one of the bases of conflict resolution. When you think about it, we all have our ideas around attack and defense. Every conflict going on right now at all the levels, and remember the levels that were outlined in the first video, from the most interior domain of conflict resolution to the most exterior. We have the intra-personal level. How do I resolve conflicts within myself? Then there's the interpersonal level, conflicts between me and another individual. Then there's the intra-faith level, conflicts within my group of like-minded people, like-minded in terms of belief system or ideology. And then there's the interfaith level, or interreligious or inter-ideological, the conflicts that can grow up between my group and other groups. Groups can be big. They can number in the billions. They can number in the millions. Now, sometimes it's good to have a bit of a model. I say that definitely some people might want to come in at the intrapersonal level because they seem to be more interested in meditation and healing oneself, and other people have an interest in geopolitics, so they might want to jump in at this most exterior domain of conflict resolution. But there is a continuum here, and all the levels are related to one another. And if you just begin somewhere and you start doing some work, say in marriage counselling or psychotherapy or whatever, then eventually you'll discover how all the levels are interconnected. Is there an image that we can use in our modern scientific age that can depict the relationship between the inner work and the outer work, interior peace and exterior peace? I think maybe there is. I think that these truths have been put in different ways over the ages, but we live in a technological age, and science is set up as the authority. So if we draw a metaphor from science and technology, that of the hologram, maybe we can understand this in a fresh way. Now, what's a hologram? I think there are two aspects that interest me about a hologram, and I've been in science museums where I've seen a hologram set up from a laser display, and the lasers create the illusion of three-dimensionality. So this is one aspect of it, is that there's an interference field of lasers, and it's almost like 2 dimensions becomes 3 dimensions. It produces this interference pattern which gives depth. Now, whilst that could have an analogy and a meaning in our spiritual undertaking, for example, the relationship between spirit and matter, between mind and matter, There is another aspect of the hologram which might be even more instructive, and that is when you have an image in a hologram. It might be a map with a coastline, or it might be the image of a tree, or of a planet, or of a human face. And you break that image, then the fragment, contains the image of the whole picture. Have you seen that? Have you come across that? A hologram is an image.
I heard about it.
Yeah. According to which the part contains the whole. The whole, of course, contains the part. But when you break a bit of the image off and look at it, you've got the whole in there. I think that's a way of putting it in these technological times. What I'm reaching for is a description of a consciousness which I believe we need to cultivate, where we see ourselves and the world as one, and we look out into the world and we see both the beauty and the horror of it. But we're also aware that that is reflecting the beauty and the horror in ourselves. This troubled world is a reflection of me. So, in this way, as I begin to heal myself through intrapersonal conflict resolution, I can participate in the healing of the world. It's one movement. If the part contains the whole, we have to be always mindful of attacking something outside ourselves, because we're really attacking ourselves. If that truth is that there is a oneness between self and the world, we attack something outside, we're attacking ourselves. We have to alienate something to attack it in the first place. It has to be alien, other. We other it, right? And that's meant as a pejorative. Not, oh, there's another friend. We other it, we alienate it, and we become alienated from it. The war hawk, and most of us human beings, generating conflict all the time, we're in a constant process of alienating other people, other groups. Whereas the peacemaker has to be in the business of abolishing alienation. And the way to do that is to get up close and personal. I don't mean physically, I mean spiritually. The thing that you would recoil from, the thing that you would judge and belittle and despise and fear and want to attack, is sometimes the very thing that, well, inevitably, the very thing that you would need to engage and embrace. This is a radically different ethic, but there's nothing new in it. Everyone's heard of love your enemy. Not everybody believes and practices it. Some people believe you've got friends and enemies, and you try to destroy and limit your enemies, and you lift up your friends. That's one ethic. People talk about the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It seems to be a recurring theme in all the great faiths of the world. That's easier to understand in a way, because we all want the best for ourselves, don't we? We want to treat ourselves well. And so we're encouraged to treat others well, like ourselves. And then we have another, a more startling ethic, if you like. Love your enemy. And the one who says it says, love them like I loved you. And he loved his enemy. When you love your enemy, you're embracing that which is alien and thereby eliminating and abolishing the alienation. Do you see the power in that? The source of all fear and hostility is the alienation, is the distance. It's unrealistic to think you go throughout life without creating enemies. There'll be enemies, but when you love them, in a way, they cease to be enemies. Even though they might be doing their best to damage you. That's radical forgiveness. That's the only ethic that can heal the world. And you can find that in traditions. Do you have a tradition which teaches that? Maybe you don't belong to a tradition that you're aware of, but you've heard of love your enemy. It's a bit differentiated from do unto others as you would do unto you, or even love your neighbour as yourself, because we all love ourselves. We want the best for ourselves. But this is, don't just love the ones whom you like, who treat you well, but you love the ones that attack you, hate you, curse you, spit upon you. You love your enemy. And in so doing, you help in the healing, indeed in the redemption of the world. Participate in it.
Knock the wind out of their sails.
Yes.
We do.
Some people put a sting to that saying. I remember my late father, he put a twist to it. Love your enemies, it drives them crazy.
Yeah, I was thinking of that.
Right?
Absolutely.
But that's not why you love your enemies. You love your enemies to transcend the alienation. Mm-hmm.
To try and find that common ground.
Yeah.
So you can connect with them.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're slipping a little bit of glass into the muffin there, I think. So, all of this is by way of setting the scene for the way we understand attack and defence. There's not a single fight, I dare you to find a single fight or quarrel, whether on a global scale or a local scale or within your own household, where the combatants don't justify what they're doing, their participation in this fight, by saying, we was done wrong, we were attacked first. Everybody claims that they are on the defence. It doesn't matter whether you're the biggest aggressive invader and empire builder in history, you always justify your actions in terms of defending yourself or your country. Don't you think Hitler did? Mao did? Stalin? Whoever. Who's your
Twist the truth.
who's your
to
pet
suit
hatred?
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, we all do it.
Even if you believe that there are people out there who are guilty of starting wars of aggression, they're aggressors. If you speak to them, or if you hear their own polemic, I'm sure they'll be saying, well, we were attacked first. All we're doing is responding, retaliating, protecting our interest, protecting our people's interest. Because if we don't, our people might perish off the face of the map. it's all in the name of self-defense.
And it becomes tit for tat, you know what I mean?
Oh yes, it can quickly spiral tit for tat, a vicious cycle of or
Never
circle of
stops.
retaliation. Yes, but am I trying to eradicate the notion of self-defense? No, I'm not attacking our prized value of self-defense.
We all have the right to that.
It's a right. You know, if somebody wants to kill you, to resist being killed, and it is a right for nations as well. And in the Middle Ages, I think you'll find that both the Christians and the Muslims had some kind of just war theory about when they could go to war, when it was moral to do so and when it wasn't. And one of the conditions of a just war was that it's waged in self-defense. You can't just go out of your way to attack somebody. So there is this implicit understanding of self-defense. And sometimes we have to make that discrimination. The law courts, okay, they acquit people who may have had to kill in self-defense. It's not homicide, it's self-defense. So there's a place for it in our civilization. Yeah, by the way, I mean, there are other elements of just war theory, like you wouldn't prosecute a war if you had no chance of succeeding, if you're against overwhelming odds or whatever. That doesn't make sense, because you're just going to do more damage or attract more damage to yourself. And there are other elements as well, like a war should be prosecuted by a duly constituted authority, not some militia or vigilante group, but a government, a king with his army or whoever. So I'm not here to decry all of that legal thinking around just war or self-defense. I do, however, want to make the point that it's not uncomplicated, and we must be very aware that self-defense can be a stumbling block and a trap. Everybody justifies their violence by recourse to self-defense. This should give us reason to pause in the first instance. Whoa. Now, amongst that everybody, maybe for this group over here, it is actually self-defense, and it can be legally and morally justified. But for a large part of combatants, it's not rational or moral self-defense. It's violence. It's the indulgence of aggression. So we must be very discriminating in this area of attack and defense. We must keep our wits about us.
So unless somebody's charging at you with a knife or a gun, you really don't have a leg to stand on.
Yes. I mean, one of the problems of self-defense, apart from the fact that everybody invokes it to justify their violence, is that it tends to become preemptive if you're living in a constant state of tension. Or you're afraid of attack, you'll strike first. You'll take preemptive action. Because there's that old saying that the best form of defense is attack. So if you think, or somebody whispers in your ear, and makes a case that you're going to be attacked by so-and-so or by such and such country, then you've got a justification for hitting them first before they hit you.
That's the major case scenario, but then you've got smaller scenarios, like you hear on the news, somebody that may have a mental illness.
That's right.
May come out with a knife in front of the police.
Exactly.
And they end up shot.
Exactly. It's a trigger-happy situation. And you know, one of the tragic things is seeing how police under pressure, somebody may just be reaching down like this. They may not even have a weapon.
That's right.
They may just be mentally disturbed. And we've seen this on the streets of the US and Australia, in other places.
It's happening a lot here.
We've seen that they just have to make one move. And the police officers are already in a heightened state of awareness. Awareness is probably not the word, of tension. They react. It becomes knee-jerk, and like so that
Australian woman in
they
America.
Shoot and they kill. They don't just shoot and maim or wound like that Australian woman in America. And then the next thing you know, the person's dead, and they didn't have any concealed weapon. They're just some poor youth with a mental problem.
That's right.
So tragedies happen.
Needed help.
Yeah.
Not needed to be killed.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you can understand how it comes about, because if they were actually reaching for a gun, you can't wait to see whether they're going to pull a gun and fire it on you, because you could be dead, so you shoot.
But you can disable them. You don't need to shoot to kill.
But here's the thing. In that situation, when people aren't calm, because they're not calm, because their awareness has contracted into defending themselves, they stop thinking about the other person's security, because it's contracted. They're only trying to save themselves, and they think, in order to save myself and my colleagues, I have to shoot first. I have to hit first, because there may not be another chance. Otherwise, we may be taken out. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the problems with our typical justifications of self-defense is the preemptive strike. And with the preemptive strike, you can find yourself using deadly force to an alarming degree. And if the culture becomes a gun culture and a violent culture, that just spirals. And so everybody's like this and trigger happy.
Yeah.
And on the brink of using deadly force if anybody just cocks an eyebrow at them the wrong way.
Yeah. It's happening a lot. We know that it happens in America a lot, but it's also starting to happen here.
It can happen anywhere. It's a human problem. Another problem with our notions around self-defense is that we sometimes think that only the physical matters. There's an old nursery rhyme that we used to say as kids: sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Mm-hmm. Well, is that wrong or right? I think it's wrong, because names do hurt people.
The word can be very poisonous.
Oh, yes.
Far more poisonous than physical punishment.
With a word, you can ruin somebody's reputation.
Oh, you can ruin them inwardly as well. Like, they could end up with all kinds of hang-ups and problems that they have to deal with for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. So I think you would agree with me, wouldn't you, that there is such a thing as emotional abuse and psychological abuse?
Oh, absolutely.
And psychological warfare. If you are engaged in psychological warfare,
that's the worst, I think.
Yeah, and there are all sorts of people want to do their magic, and institutes and governments can engage in psychological warfare against their own population. Okay, they're not coming around and breaking a limb. Mm-hmm. They're not putting a bullet in your head, but they are attempting to damage you. It's not love, people.
No, it's not.
It's violence.
It is violence, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we want to look out into the world and see love, but we must be discriminating, and we must know what love is and what hostility is as well. So so in other words, it's not just sticks and stones that break my bones. That is a violence or an attack on me. It can be words, it can be emotional or psychological abuse. And so the mind-body dichotomy breaks down a bit here, and we have to look at the picture holistically. You know, the people that say we were attacked first and we're just engaged in self-defense, even if you can trace it, you say, no, you weren't. You shot the first bullet. From their perception, and it may be warped, they probably feel emotionally, psychologically, socially, culturally abused. Do you understand? Sticks and stones weren't used. Rockets and bullets and bombs dropped from F-16s weren't used, but nevertheless, they felt attacked, abused, betrayed, whatever, violated in some way and attacked. Freedom is freedom from attack. They didn't feel free from attack. And so they physicalized the whole operation. This is somebody in a pub fight, right? May have thrown the first punch, but you don't know what was going on in that person's mind before. They were justifying throwing that first punch. And they feel attacked or abused some way, don't they? This is another problem with the perception of attack. It's so easy to feel that we are being attacked at some level. And in fact, because we inevitably blur the mind-body distinction, attack, defense, self-defense all become problematic. Now, highly intelligent people believe in self-defense. The whole of the self-defense industry, come to our dojo and learn how to defend yourself, or get a firearm, go to a pistol range and learn how to use this and be ready to use it. Take out the bad guys. It's predicated on the idea that bad stuff can happen at any moment to good people. That the world is a dangerous place, that things happen for, without rhyme or reason. You can just be mugged walking home one night. Well, yes. Am I going to push back on that? Maybe. Just hold that thought for a second. There are people who practice the occult arts, the dark arts, and you see it on books sometimes, psychic self-defense. So the claim here is that somebody could just attack you, I suppose a form of psychological warfare at any time. Put a hex on you, a curse, the evil eye, or maybe something more insidious. So at any moment, you could be the target of some vile, invisible attack, and you need to learn self-defense in the psychic realm. And people set a lot of store on self-defense. And as I say, it's all predicated on the fact that you can be just minding your own business and suddenly somebody can jump out of the shadows and mug you, or just decide to target you arbitrarily. Maybe there is a pushback possible here, argumentatively, I mean. And I'm not going to be dogmatic, and I'm not here to tell you what it's like. I'm here to ask you a question. Do things just happen by chance? Or is there an order in the world? Are there consequences and causes and effects? Have you ever wondered whether it's the people that are preparing to fight all the time that end up in fights? It's the people that are arming themselves with weapons to the hilt that end up using those weapons. Is there any relationship here? Is there any cause and effects?
It's what they're focused
Are
on.
there what you're focused on does attract various things into your life.
Absolutely.
So if I'm always vigilant that I'm going to be attacked and I'm building up my armoury, whether I'm the head of state or whether I'm just a person looking around for better self-defence techniques on the physical, on the spiritual, what if I have an intrapersonal conflict and there's one part of me that's alien to another part of me, and these two parts are warring? They're not in proper communication or communion. I haven't abolished the alienation within myself, and so I project it, externalize it, and I'm going to attract into my life certain things. I just want to leave you with the thought that perhaps the best way to have security is to see to it that your brother and sister have security. It's one
Absolutely.
security for both of you. If you don't care what situation the other is in, will you ever sleep well at night? I just want to defend my people from attack. Doesn't matter what the consequences are. It can be overkill. It can be horrific, nightmarish overkill. It can be genocidal overkill. Doesn't matter. Because your awareness is contracted back to self. And when it contracts just to self, you're alienated from the other. And that's the source, the root of the whole problem. And also remember that maybe there is a relationship between what we do, how we think, and what we bring into our lives as well, and then what we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what we have to deal with. Maybe we're preparing ourselves for something, and in so preparing, we're kind of attracting it. It's like
You think about
the
it.
self-fulfilling
Yeah.
prophecy, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah? Just think about that and the potency of that and how it might be operating in our lives individually and collectively. We'll see you next time.